Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
A Time for True show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for True show. It's a pleasure to have you back with us again, and I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff. Tonight, we're going to cover something that's so crucial because when you lose a loved one, not because they are deceased or pass away, but because they lose their faculties and you feel hopeless, it's a very sad and despondent time. But there's been many developments in healthcare, and tonight we're very lucky to have a very renowned doctor with us who's going to be discussing something that I know you're going to find very important to you, and I'm actually looking forward to myself. Engineer, if we can put her pictures up on the screen of Dr. Julie Mayer Hunt, DC, FCCJP, DICCP, of Meyer Chiropractic in Clearwater, Florida. A board member of the International Chiropractors Association. Board certified diplomate in clinical chiropractic pediatrics. Board certified fellow in craniocervical junction procedures. Board certified chiropractic orthospinology. Life Chiropractic College. Doctor of Chiropractic. With advanced graduate certification from the Society of Chiropractic Orthospinology. Dr. Meyer Hunt is past board member of the Florida Board of Chiropractic Medicine, past president of the Society of Chiropractic Orthospinology, Chiropractor of the Year for the International Chiropractic Association in 2014, and again Chiropractor of the Year for the Upper Cervical Care Council in 2016. She's been honored with the President's Award of the International Chiropractic Association, the Palmer Award, the Upper Cervical Health Centers, Chiropractor of the Year, Society of Chiropractic Orthospinology, Outstanding Service Award from the Florida Chiropractic Society. The doctor has authored and co-authored numerous articles on pediatric chiropractic, orthospinology procedures, an evidence-based approach to spinal care, a mystery answer to restoring brain health, co-authored with David Minkoff, MD, observations at the craniocervical junction using upright MRI, upper cervical chiropractic care, case study, upper cervical chiropractic care and infant case study, upper cervical chiropractic care of a pediatric patient, a case study. Dr. Hunt has presented nationally concerning upper cervical chiropractic and upper cervical pediatrics to the Society of Chiropractic Orthospinology, Palmer College, Life University, Life Chiropractic College West, and has also taught on the fields of upper cervical health, evolution, fusion, and chiropractic pediatrics. She is renowned in the topic that we're going to be covering on this particular program. And Buddha, if you will, let's bring her up live and bid a warm welcome to Dr. Julie Mayer Hunt to A Time for Truth show. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Glad to be with you, Dr. Fialkoff.
It's definitely my honor to have you with us, and I want to get right to it because you have so much to share. First, I want to ask you, when you were a young woman, what were your dreams?
From the time I was 6 years old, I knew I wanted to be a chiropractor, just like my dad. I announced it in the treatment room, and nothing ever changed. I just wanted to take care of people the way I saw my dad helping people. It was amazing, truly amazing.
What a beautiful story. So, and so then you become a chiropractor, you're working with your father, and I want to ask you, because you really have some very interesting information to really give out here on the show. What is the importance of the brain-body connection for the nervous system?
So the brain-body communication is through the central nervous system, which is your brain and your spinal cord. If you disrupt any of that communication, you're shutting down signals from the brain, which run every single function in your body.
Amazing. And now, so I think most of the people out there viewing realize that there's a fluid around the brain called the cerebrospinal fluid, and that it flows. But tell us a little bit about that so we bring everyone up to speed, because I know you're going to be going over how this actually affects brain health. So tell us a little bit about this fluid flow and the mechanism of how this gets disrupted.
Terrific. Could you bring up that image that showed the textbook?
Sure, absolutely. Engineer, if you can bring up the image of the book, please. There we go.
So when we look at the spine and the nervous system, it doesn't take an engineer to figure out which person is going to have better health. If you say which person is going to have a better immune system, I've got the published study that getting the nervous system balanced supports the immune system and strengthens it. But for my first 30 years of practice, I was focused on getting the weight of the head centered over the spinal column. Average weight of the head is 10 to 14 pounds, and basically we're top heavy. And head neck trauma, falls, accidents, injuries, all of that can affect that positioning. But about 12 years ago, I got involved in research out of New York, there in Albany, where we measured fluid flow to and from the brain before and after the alignment. And we had 43 patients that weekend that we did pre and post MRIs. And honestly, I was stunned at the changes in the fluid flow. I had never conceived the effect that we were having on fluid flow to the brain. And when we look at the fluid flow to the brain, we can all understand that's probably important. But interestingly enough, a year after we did the research at the University of Rochester, they found the lymphatic system for the brain, which had never been known before. It was not anything that was taught when I was in school. Certainly it wasn't anything that my son, Dr. Travis, was about halfway through chiropractic college when they found this system. And so the lymphatic system for the brain is what cleans the brain of the waste and toxins. And the simplest example I can give you is that head-neck relationship, if it's not balanced, it's literally a kink in the hose. So we saw across the board, in fact, the inventor of the MRI developed the software to measure the fluid flow changes because it had never been looked at in the past. And it took a couple of years to get the software developed, but on average in those 43 patients, there was an average of 25% improvement in fluid flow to the brain. And the lymphatic system for the brain is dependent on cleaning and washing the brain. Now that system works the best when we're sleeping, particularly in a deep sleep. It tends to work better on your side, right side first, left side second. That fluid flow system works best in a deep sleep, and so getting deep sleep is important. They also find that exercise is important. If you're getting regular exercise, that tends to improve the fluid flow. And the inventor of the MRI made the measurements and found that we process an average of 32 quarts of fluid a day. So anything that we do to disrupt that fluid flow means our brain isn't getting the cleaning it needs, which they're now linking certainly to dementia and Alzheimer's, and they're looking at how it relates to other neurodegenerative diseases. So this is critically important. Other things.
Is this? You mentioned to me a little bit about what you call the lymphatic system.
That is the lymphatic system. G for glial cell, for brain cells. G, lymphatic. It's well worth going on YouTube and taking a look at what's going on here, because if you want to keep your brain cleaned and healthy, you want to keep the system flowing right, you want to do smart things. I mean, they want you to sleep well, they want you to exercise. There's other factors there that they will discuss, but, very important data for brain health. Now, on an interesting observation, in our practice of 65 years, I've had 2 people develop dementia, Alzheimer's type symptoms, and it was a mother and daughter. I've had a couple people post-surgical procedures develop some Parkinson's, but all of our wellness care patients that have been with us for decades, I don't see this happening with them. And so that kind of speaks to me that, keeping patients in alignment has a huge effect not only on their spinal health, their brain-body communication, but on their brain health. And at the end of the day, it's about your brain health. So it's very exciting to be involved in this research.
Absolutely, I can see why. I had a question for you, and probably the viewers would be interested in this, and you mentioned a little bit about it, but what type of exercises improve this system of fluid flow? What type of exercise should we do?
It's mainly your cardio. Your walking, your cycling, your elliptical. It's cardio in particular that improves the fluid flow because of the energy when you're exercising. The fluid's moving quicker, like your blood is.
I see.
Very
okay. And how? So, I know that chiropractic also has a lot of information regarding meridians and things like that. Is that true?
That is true. My dad did acupuncture for many years back in the 60s and 70s. He did what was called a ruby red laser to do the acupuncture work and balancing the meridians along with the nervous system.
Very interesting, because Dr. Hunt is basically presenting. So I was going to ask you, what point would you recommend for people, or what points regarding this, what you're talking about with the fluid flow?
So, as I look at patients who've been in accidents, they are more in need of being supported than patients who haven't been traumatized. Football players, boxers, look at how many people neurodegenerative diseases after multiple head traumas. So just know that what you do with this body, if you're doing something repetitively that is whacking this head neck around, that you're going to need to take better care of it. My swimmers, I see the least of. My triathletes, I see every 2 weeks. They just knock the snot out of themselves. But that's what they want to do. And as long as they take care of themselves, I'm good with it.
I see. Okay. And now, how is this waste clearing system of the brain organ, dependent on fluid flow that comes in and goes out? Explain that a little bit, please.
So literally, this right here at the base of the skull where the atlas and axis are, from the second bone, the axis down to the sacrum, all of the bones chain together. They hook together. They will move a certain degree, and then they stop. The top bone can literally do a 360. And so when you get head neck trauma, if it alters that positioning, not only does it change the brain-body communication, but it also affects that fluid flow. So we literally take x-rays on an X, Y, and Z axis with a computerized system, laser aligned, that's we can calibrate out to the 100th of the degree on that X, Y, and Z axis and know exactly how to center that weight of that head over the spinal column. And actually, over the years, I found a really good example was I took an 11-pound bowling ball, because the weight of our head is 10 to 14 pounds.
The head is about 13 pounds. And obviously then it's like a bowling ball that's suspended above your neck. And there we go. And so go ahead, continue. We're back. I was filling in for you. So there we go. Let's go. We're going to get a strike, or we're going to 8 pins, or what? So go ahead with a bowling ball.
So when you look at the spinal dynamics, I can look at the mid-back, the low back, the neck. But if I don't get that weight of that head centered, it's going to drive the problem all day long. So that's why we always start with putting people's heads on straight.
It makes a lot of sense. You know, I never realized really or thought of how heavy it really is. And, you know, really, I guess the only time you get any rest is when you're either lying down or resting, right?
And, you know, most patients who come in are going to weigh somewhere between 150, 180 pounds, most adults. So, and one of the examples I use to help patients understand, because the other factor is when we do MRIs, if we do them laying down, we don't see the same factors that we see upright. So when we lay down, the back of the head acts like a bowl, and the weight of the brain will settle into the belly of the bowl. With upright, it sits in a different position and can be blocking fluid flow depending on the positioning, which explains why so many people like to lay down with a headache, because it opens up fluid flow and diminishes the pain sequence that's going on. So when I see interrupted fluid flow, the top 5 symptoms that I'm aware of to look for are headaches, dizziness, brain fog, anxiety, and depression. And let me explain those last 2 symptoms. If your heart's an organ, your brain's an organ. If your heart wasn't getting the fluid flow it needed, could you have chest pain? If the brain's not getting the fluid it needs, could you have headaches? Absolutely. But if this blood flow to the heart is disrupted for a long period of time, could that tissue get irritable? I see the same thing happening with the brain. The brain isn't getting what it needs and it gets irritable. If it stays irritated long enough, it starts to shut down. So these are kind of symptoms I look for as I'm working up a new patient to understand what I need to do to figure out their picture to get them to their optimal health.
I see. And now, when we sleep, do you recommend, there's all kinds of different pillows. Do you recommend a certain type of pillow, or do you think it's really not that important?
It's really important. I've worked with a pillow from what's called foot levelers for 42 years. I absolutely love it. For side sleeping, when I'm showing them to patients, I show them how it supports them on their back, supports that curve in the neck that we all need for function. And then when you go on your side, I tell them prepare to fall in love. And the minute they go on their side, it's perfect. Their head and neck are supported beautifully. It's absolutely divine.
And what is the name of that pillow again?
It's from the company called Foot Levelers, and it's called Pillowpedic.
Pillowpedic. And that's the one that has a little round that goes underneath your head, and then I see.
Yes. And then when you lay on your side, it keeps you perfectly aligned.
I see. So what you want to do is put the very round part underneath the neck so that it's...
Right.
Interesting. Okay, now, I want to ask you this question because it's very important. What is now being recognized as a root cause for all neurodegenerative diseases, and from dementia, ALS? What have we found?
What they're certainly seeing is the disruption in the cerebrospinal fluid flow and the blood flow pattern to the brain has an effect that is being considered. Now, with MS, right after I did my research 12 years ago, I had a young woman come in, 31 years old. She was predicted to be in a wheelchair within 4 to 6 weeks. She could not walk from me across the room 3 feet without 2 people helping her to walk because she had no ability to function. When I checked her laying on her back, she could not lift either leg off the table. And they were looking at MS as the diagnosis. So I went to work in a very, how do I say, dedicated way. And I worked with her very fervently. We got her legs back, and when we did a repeat MRI, the lesion load was gone. And I hear from her periodically now. She's out doing 5 and 10Ks. Lesion load is gone. She has no more MS symptoms. But she came to me early on. If I have a patient who's been in a wheelchair for 20 years, I'm not going to see that same response, because once those lesions develop in the brain, they become like scars, and the older the scar is, the harder it is to work with. Hers were fairly fresh. But it speaks to me about the importance of being under care throughout your life to maintain this nervous system, which is the key to our health, and the fluid flow for the brain.
Interesting. So let me ask you a question that is a different type of problem, but very common. And as a surgeon, dental surgeon, I treat this, but I wanted to ask you something. So we're talking about sleep apnea, but let's look at something that I'm curious about. Not an obese person, and not really a person with an airway problem, but somehow it seems like there's so much snoring. So why is there so much snoring and sleep apnea, even in people who they're not obese? They don't really have the reason for it. Why is this? Is there a reason for what you're talking about?
Yes, I have seen on the pre and post MRIs firsthand, I have seen that airway go from being restricted and, not round. And then after the alignment, particularly with somebody who has a lot of y-axis rotation at that top level of spine, I've seen that airway become very patent and open. And it really intrigued me what I was seeing, because over the years, there's a number of patients that I'm treating on wellness care basis or for whatever consideration. And, 3 to 4 months later, they're telling me they no longer snore at night, according to their spouse. And I just said, well, it must be helping. I didn't understand what we were doing. I didn't understand the effect on the soft tissue when that spine is not aligned.
Very interesting. Okay, well, you gave me an answer, because I really was curious about this, because, I see how in our society, this is so prevalent. And, okay, so now, let me ask you a question. What kind of healing can we expect or different things that you've seen clinically, and you have so many years of practice, when you precisely have an alignment at your, like you, with a chiropractor?
So certainly, the younger you start, I always recommend from birth. Let's keep this nervous system working from day one. Why would we not do that? And I recommend kids to be checked following birth, and then once they're lifting their head up, once they're sitting, and once they're walking, and then a couple of times a year thereafter. If they get injured or in a fall, something like that, certainly bring them in and get them checked in the meantime. When I work with adults, like Dr. Scott Rosa, who I mentioned to you, is in Albany, who's the head of this research. He's actually the one who did the study. It was a physical therapist that I was working with from here in Florida, who had been down for 20-some years with a neck problem, and it actually changed the airway measurably. But he, we have seen many changes, but it's always important to know that there's limitations of matter. When he works with, there's a link out there, if you Google upper cervical and Jim McMahon, most people know who Jim McMahon is. I mean, it's Jim McMahon's explanation, but he said when he got adjusted, it felt like a toilet bowl flushed. And he no longer had these bad suicidal thoughts. He didn't have all the neck and head pain. His eyes were so much better. It's just dramatic. It's really fun to listen to. Jim just has a very special way of sharing things. I would never think of saying it feels like a toilet bowl flush, but that was his take.
Well, I like that. It's a nice humorous comment, but makes sense. It released a lot of stuck or stops or flows that weren't progressing properly, and so what would you recommend to the viewers in terms of to keep their wellness, in terms of sleeping? You talked about the aerobic exercise. What else, what other, recommendations do you have, doctor?
So keeping your nervous system balanced to me is number one core. Getting the right exercise, the right foods, the right sleep. I mean, those are all pillars of our health. We have to look at those things. But, when I've worked with patients who, let's say, like Jim McMahon was in his 50s when he came in, all of his dementia stuff cleared up. But if somebody comes to me in their 80s with dementia type stuff, I don't see the same results. And so that just speaks to the aging process and how long things have been going on. So I always recommend the sooner you can get checked, the better. The International Chiropractic Association has a website, and in 2013 I launched a 3-year board certification program for doctors to become experts in this who are upper cervical doctors. And so there's doctors throughout the world now, not in Cuba yet. We'll work on it. But who are doing the upper cervical work and who are looking at the detail of the cranial cervical junction and the fluid flow dynamics as well.
Well, you know what? It's been a great show, and it's been so informative. And so what always happens is the time has flown by. We've run to the end of the show, but if you could, in about 30 seconds or less, what final comment would you like to leave our viewers?
Please get your head on straight. get yourself aligned. Get that fluid flow, blood flow. I mean, all of that is essential.
Well, you know what? I had Dr. Minkoff on the show, and I'm going to offer you the same thing, because I'm going to be down in Florida towards the end of the month. And what I said to him, why don't we do a show out of your office, and you can show us the different instrumentation you have, maybe give us some type of demo. And so I give that open to you also. I'm sure that the viewers would find it very interesting to be inside your office. How does that sound?
I'd love it. That'd be fantastic.
Let's do it. And unfortunately, we've run to the end of the show, but thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
It's been a pleasure. And for those of you out there, take Dr. Hunt's advice, visit your chiropractic, get that pillow to sleep at night, do the aerobic exercise, and we will see you on the next episode of A Time for Truth, and you'll be breathing well, sleeping well, and you'll be a whole new person. See you next time.
Thank you.
Was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got. The world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet